And I'd like to invite on stage from Michael Stores, Patty Popson, and behavioral scientist Ashley Hanks. Okay, so everyone, I'm sure, is familiar with Michael Stores.
I hope so.
My kids love it.
Yay.
Yes, school projects galore there. So, and also Aaron Brothers, right? So the framing and everything else. So give us a little insight for those people that don't have a Michaels in their backyard. Just give us an insight into Michaels, please.
Well, some of the things people might not know about Michaels is we actually started right here in Dallas, Texas, with about 12 stores, and we've grown to over 1,100 stores. Aaron Brothers. We have over 40,000 associates that work for us across the country and in Canada. That is actually bigger than the town I grew up in of 15,000. So we manage like a small town when you think about the number of associates that we have. We also have manufacturing, artistry. Our artistry location actually manufactures a lot of our custom moldings, our frames and our mats that actually go out to our stores.
So also one of the interesting things is Michaels has been one of the longest standing relationships that we've had at PeopleAnswers. We've been a partner now for, I think, over 10 years.
That's correct.
And Michaels is actually very instrumental in us building out a lot of the capabilities that everyone uses in the tool today. Lots of cool integrations and lots of great thinking. So that long relationship's really served everybody well, and I thank you for that.
Very much.
So talk to us a little bit about the recent journey with PeopleAnswers and where are we going next?
So a few years ago, probably about 3 years ago, our operators were looking at how we run our stores, and we were really fundamentally changing the way we operated. And we called that store of the future, as you mentioned earlier. Yeah. So at the time, in our traditional stores, everybody kind of did everything. So we'd hire associates, they might unload the truck, they might work on the sales floor, stock the shelves, and we'd have different people. We managed more by department. So somebody would run the arts and crafts department, or somebody might run the jewelry department, and then they did everything. And so as we looked at our operation, we realized that we could better serve our associates and our customer if we segmented those operations. So we divided down into two teams. We had a team that replenished, so they unloaded the truck, kept the shelves stocked, and then we had a team that was more customer facing. Okay. And so as a result of that, we were creating some positions that didn't exist to manage and lead those teams. So we had a replenishment manager, a customer experience manager. So we had no incumbents in that role, but the operators came to us and said, we want a PeopleAnswers profile. That was the good news. Wow. Because they had such faith in what we'd already done that they wanted a new profile. Now, they wanted us just to kind of move those green bars around to give them a little bit more of this and a little bit more of that. But we explained to them really the science that went into those profiles, and once we educated them on that, then they realized that we'd had such success with our profiles that maybe that might not be the best solution. So a little bit like the Hertz North Star project. We're basically trying to create something that didn't necessarily exist and use our experience to try and take us where we needed to go. So Ashley, talk to us about how you made that happen.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So. Yes, just like the North Star experience, the store of the future for Michaels had these positions, but no incumbents, knew actually what the performance metrics were going to be, but again, didn't have the people to drive that. Now, I think we mentioned, but if we didn't, Michaels did have a general department manager profile in place, so a custom profile that had been validated that they were using when the department managers were doing the same things across all different areas. So we actually kind of leveraged that custom profile and did what we call an added competency. So an added competency essentially is like a mini profile that can be used to predict a different competency, something like leadership ability or customer focus, or a different performance criterion that's in addition to what your main custom profile is predicting. So for Michaels, this was identifying, for the replenishment manager, what should performance look like for that, and then also the customer focus, and created added competencies for each of those. And you can actually see on the slide kind of example of how that looks in the system.
So how did you communicate these new competencies out to the field? What was the mechanism for doing that?
So we had worked with some subject matter experts that were on the team, on the project team for the Store of the Future, and they'd helped us identify what those competencies were. And at the same time, we were looking at our entire interview process. And so fortunately for us, the way we launched it was along with the launch. This was a 2-year project. So we brought our stores in phases, and so as part of the launch, we introduced our new interview guides, and then that gave us the opportunity to introduce this concept of these added competencies.
So everybody thinks they're an SME. How did you pick the SMEs out in the field to actually use as benchmarks? Or
Well, we were fortunate also in that we had subject matter experts on the project team that were our district managers.
Okay.
And because we had the KPIs, they knew what they wanted the people to do, and they're the ones that really had the vision of what these positions were going to do in the store. So we leveraged them and used the project team as our subject matter experts.
Okay. So the results of that process is now the equivalent of the new North Star for you, and so you're rolling that out. What's the next phase?
So we just rolled out 4 custom profiles. We were able, after about 18 months, to go in and really look at the performance data. We had people long enough in position that we could look at those new positions, and we could actually create 4 different profiles for our store level managers.
So again, as we wrap up the journey, Ashley, what advice would you give to people in the audience who are going through the similar kind of thought process now as businesses are changing, retail's changing dramatically, a lot of people are trying to come to terms with this. What advice would you give?
You know, I think it's the same message we're just trying to get across through all this, is to try to stay on the science, fact side as much as possible. You know, leverage profiles that you already have in place, leverage expertise, you know, work with us to find the best solution. You know, Michael's tagline is where creativity happens, and I think this is a nice example where creativity can happen at PeopleAnswers. So really blending a very data-driven approach, which is always the preferred best approach. But as John said at the outset, you know, sometimes the circumstances aren't ideal, but stick as much to science fact as possible.
Cool. John, anything else?
We didn't get to talk about kind of some of the Michaels results specifically, but I know we had some really impressive study results, specifically that 9.8% higher operating income for kind of store managers. Would you like to just tell a little bit about what that meant to the business? And
Absolutely. That was probably one of the key things that help us as we're talking about PeopleAnswers, and especially as we were going into that project, to help our operators understand why the integrity of the profiles were so important. Because when we had done our post-deployment study at our store manager level, we did see a 9.8% difference in true operating income for those people that were hired in the recommended bucket. So those stories were able to really help us as we looked at the right thing to do with these new profiles for these positions that didn't exist.
And what level of the organization does it have visibility to in terms of your leadership team? Is that something you communicate regularly?
Typically to our top executives, and then as needed, as we're working with different project teams and they come to us and
Right.
say, you know, we want to look at the PeopleAnswers profiles, we'll use that opportunity to communicate with them some of the results that we've had.
Wow, tremendous. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming in this morning. I really enjoyed hearing the story. So thank you. Big round of applause for Michaels. Thank you.